Jason is coming in from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Today, we're going to be talking about a breakdown of the election week coverage and emphasis on election week. And as this was not a regular election day, I think for all of us, it's been a Tuesday just never seemed to stop. It was a very long day. The next thing I knew, it was Saturday night. So I'm bringing on Jason now. So, Jason, can you tell me a little bit about your initial thoughts and reactions to just how the overall election went for most people?
To be honest, it was a lot smoother than I expected. We were kind of bracing for an apocalyptic meltdown. Some people were saying it would be election month. So I think we really hedged our bets. Everyone had really low expectations for how efficient. In the media circle, we were kind of prepped for like the worst case scenario, and things were only like a 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10 catastrophe. So they're still trying. The people are still trying to steal the election, but it's not as serious as we had hoped.
Right. No, I completely understand that. So I guess looking specifically at the election itself, let's break it down from like what people saw. I think it was just so, this election has been so taxing for not only journalists like yourself and myself. It's been hard for a lot of people. I think everyone has been glued to their televisions, glued to their phones, and the energy had just been sapped from everybody until the announcement of President-elect Joe Biden winning the ticket. I think we need to, let's break it down for a bit. So I think starting off on the election day itself, Tuesday, it started off with, I think, a spiral of fear where a lot of people like came in looking at the election and feeling very afraid as the red wave pretty much took over America. It seemed like it was very much a copy and paste of the 2016 election against Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. But then, and even going into the late night and going into the early morning of Wednesday, people were still afraid and not really sure what was going to happen. Both the blue wall states they were also leaning red again, as they did in the 2016 election. And if this would have been a copy and paste year, I think that would have destroyed a lot of people's hopes and dreams, just because a lot of Dems and like other Democrats and the left-leaning side people in the Democratic Party all believed that this would have been a quick, easy turnout election due to the 4 years that President Trump has already led the country. And in a sense, many people have said in turmoil and just in racist xenophobia and misogynistic actions, it was a sure win for the Dems. But I think after Tuesday night, it seemed like that wasn't really the case. Looking a little bit more forward into the following days, I think the veil kind of lifted as we saw. It wasn't really the red mirage, is what we call it in the news industry and like in the political and analytical business. It was literally what we saw the first night. So much red everywhere across the country. But then all of a sudden, it kind of lifted. The veil lifted for everyone when it was the mail-in ballots that were being counted. And again, the majority of the mail-in ballots were about 70 to 80% were for Joe Biden, while about 20-ish% were for Donald Trump. Because of this, this really boosted, as we could see with Wisconsin, with Michigan, of course, with Pennsylvania. It's what pretty much saved Biden the presidency. I think one big thing I wanted to just bring up, though, was the response from the Republican Party. A lot of people seem like these votes came out of nowhere. They were confused. They believed that these were fake votes. And they felt like going off of their own president's branding of this seeming takeover of the election was the Dems were stealing the election from them. It was a stolen election. But I guess turning to you, Jason, I want to ask you a little bit about what in Pennsylvania, it was extremely heated when it was announced on Saturday that, President-elect Joe Biden won it. So how I know you said you were at the actual protest / celebration. I'm not really sure what to call it. It was like a fusion of the two at the Capitol. What would you describe it as? Like, could you tell us a little bit about it, your experience?
So I wouldn't say heated to describe Saturday. I use heated to describe Thursday, Friday, maybe Tuesday, and not even heated because what had happened was you mentioned fear. Philadelphia, the fear has not so much as been of Trump and so on and so forth. But the National Guard has been in our city for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, because of riots following the death of a man named Walter Wallace. So the backdrop of all protests and political happenings is happening with the military in the background in front of City Hall at Philadelphia. On top of that, I believe it was on not the day after the election, but Thursday morning or Wednesday morning, the Trump campaign came to town to allege that there was massive voter fraud happening in Philadelphia. Corey Lewandowski came with an injunction to go into the voting site. They threw a big hoopla, and they were supposed to have a press conference outside of the convention center. Protesters showed up, a small amount of protesters, maybe like 20, 15 people, and actually made the Trump team move their press conference from the convention center in Center City towards the airport, a place where nobody really lives. So ever since that moment, Republicans and conservatives, fans of the president, have come and stood out front of the convention center and chanted about election fraud, but they were outnumbered by hundreds and even thousands of people showing up cheering, count the vote. Count the vote, because this move by the president to steal the election, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes, has been telegraphed by his team for months. So activists in Philadelphia were prepared for it. They had sweatshirts with "Count the Vote" and "Count Every Vote" printed for this day. You know how long it takes to print hoodies? It's not an easy task. It's not something you could do very, very quickly. So everyone was kind of ready for this. Activists, politicians. There are claims that Republicans were not allowed in Philadelphia's voting site. The commissioner in charge of the elections in Philly, the city commissioner, is a Republican. He says that this claim is ridiculous. He went on 60 Minutes the other day. But they're trying to paint Philadelphia as a bastion for voter fraud, when in reality, Philadelphia is just one piece of the puzzle that helped flip Pennsylvania blue for the Democrats rather than keeping it red from 2016.
No, I think one of the most important things that we saw was the pattern of the mail-in ballots taking effect and bringing, I guess, a sense of calm, like reassurance to the Democratic Party that there was still hope. I think it was that early morning when the Wisconsin numbers came in, and from all of a sudden, Biden being behind by over 100,000 comes up and is now neck and neck with Donald Trump and is moving forward. I think at that point, when it was actually called that he won Wisconsin, was the moment that it showed this could be luck, but we didn't know for sure, but it was still an upward trend. And then all of a sudden, once Michigan got captured, that showed a pattern. And I think that pattern is what gave Democrats and many other people watching, not only just from here in the US, but internationally, hope and insight that this probably is going to flip around. And I think, as we all saw in Georgia, specifically, Georgia came down to a 1,000 vote difference. And I think we can, one of the biggest key factors in Georgia, not only was the mail-in ballots, but specifically was Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams got over 800,000 people on that were not registered to vote from the Democratic Party. And those 800,000 people obviously made a huge difference in the voting. And it's still, Georgia has not officially been called yet because it's just so close. Yeah. I think that's just something to note right now. Specifically, we actually have a map right now, and I'm putting that on the screen for all of us today. And this is what it looks like as of now. This map was screenshotted from ABC News just minutes before the broadcast started. And we can see that we still have Arizona, Alaska, North Carolina, Georgia, all not called yet. We can assume that Alaska is going to be going to the Republicans. Arizona just as tight of a race, and Georgia a tight of a race. I think one of the biggest things, though, is its history. No matter what we see with Arizona, what we see with Georgia, if with Arizona, if it flips, it had not flipped for over 24 years. So that's really important. Give me 1 second, everyone. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit lagging difficulties. While I'm fixing this, I had a quick question for Jason. Jason, can you talk a little bit about how influential Pennsylvania was for the Biden campaign and winning this election compared to the other states like Arizona and Georgia, and why it started with Pennsylvania and it ended with Pennsylvania.
Well, Pennsylvania was highly focused on by the Democratic Party. The weeks leading up to the presidential election, you saw Barack Obama come to town. You saw Joe Biden come to town. You saw Andrew Yang, Bernie Sanders. Surrogates for the Democratic Party were pouring into Philadelphia at every opportunity they got because they knew that if they could flip not just Philadelphia, but Pittsburgh and the suburbs of Philadelphia, they could get a higher turnout of the vote. And if you look at the difference between the 2016 map of Pennsylvania and the 2020 map of Pennsylvania, you see a lot more blue across the state than you would have seen otherwise. You have chunks of blue in places like Allentown and connecting Allentown to Philadelphia, which are hours apart from each other. It's all blue, whereas that entire area was red in 2016. Then towards the center of the state, you also have chunks of blue. And then up in the north, you actually have Erie swinging blue as well. So it was important because Pennsylvania is an extremely diverse state. You have the two city centers, but then you also have mountains in the Poconos. You have farms in between the two cities that have a wide variety of things that they vote and pay attention to. When you're driving from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, which I did to cover President Trump I was a member of the White House press pool. When you're driving from city to city, you saw the variants of Trump flags along the turnpike, which up until a month or two before the election were uncontested. There was not a ton of Joe Biden energy in Pennsylvania until the last few weeks before the election, but they really packed a punch. But like you pointed out, Phoenix, Arizona, Detroit, Michigan, Atlanta, Georgia, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, urban centers, cities were the reason why the Democrats ended up pulling this out. They managed to get some people in the suburbs to flip, but the sheer population of somewhere like Philly pours the votes on in a state like Pennsylvania, where you only need the lion's share of the votes to win, no matter the margin. All 20 votes goes towards that electoral college candidate.
So I think one thing, and thank you again for that, Jason.
Mm.
Now looking at out the next screenshot that we have, this is specifically looking at Georgia and the Senate race that's going on. This is something that people need to be looking at and will be watching from here on forward. Let's see. So what we can see here is that the Senate race is tight. It will be a runoff for both of the seats. You needed over 50% to get the vote, but no one got it. So going forward, it'll be on January 5th will be the runoff, and I believe this will be the attention. Media is going to be covering this left and right. There's not one eye that's not going to be looking at this race, Jason. I
Mm.
think specifically the reason is because this will determine whether or not the Republican Party will take control of the Senate and will have a majority, or if the Democrats can come in and if they can split the Senate. If they split the Senate, then Joe Biden has a chance of being able to get more bills across the aisle and get more bills just pushed through Congress. Well, if it's a Republican-controlled Senate, well then it'll probably turn into Joe Biden becoming a lame duck president for the first 2 years of his presidency until midterm elections, where the Democrats could possibly turn things around and split the Senate once again, or have an opportunity to. But I think one big thing to note is the same exact thing was said when Donald Trump became president 4 years ago. And the thought of, well, the Senate was in the Republican majority. Well, when the midterms come around, we will split it. But when midterms came
Mhm.
around, it wasn't split. So I think the idea and the notion that just wait for midterms isn't a good one for the Democrats to lean on. And I think really everyone should take the Georgia runoff election very seriously. One thing I wanted to note is specifically let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger for everyone. with the end with the celebrations, it's nice for people to take a big breath of relief. And I think, like what you were saying, a lot of people did that in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. But do you think that was too soon? Do you think there's still Donald Trump hasn't given a concession speech? Is
Yeah.
this yeah?
For the too soon thing, like we said, 2 weeks ago, Walter Wallace was killed in Philadelphia, and there was mass protests with thousands of people. And the difference in tone is that rather than rioting in the streets, looting things, and throwing bottles and bricks at riot police, people were dancing in the streets. It's a complete tone shift, especially from someone whose boots on the grounds here. There is a lot of anger in Philly. There's a lot of stuff to be mad at in this country and in this city. So to see everybody dancing, not just Saturday, because the response to the voter fraud was block parties. They threw a huge block party outside of the convention center. They had DJs and bands and dancing all week. So it was a dance party vibe anyway. And then come Saturday, the entire city showed out. Thousands of people came. DJs, met people in costumes, signs, banners, dancing and drinking in the streets like it was a holiday. It was really special. And was it too soon? Of course it's too soon. The president hasn't conceded yet. And Joe Biden is not exactly a reform president. No one in Philadelphia was really celebrating Joe Biden as they much were celebrating Donald Trump leaving office. You're never hearing people chant, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. I've never heard anyone do that once. Because the tone is not positivity around Joe Biden. The tone is rather positivity of Trump leaving office.
Now, I think specifically that means there's change. There's a reform that's coming to the country. I think that's the hopeful side of that. What the American people want, at least. What do you think? What do you think, Jason?
I think I don't want to flatten my jaw too much here, but I think you could expect like classic neoliberal reform. More of like what was happening in 2010. I think ultimately the change that we get is going to be cultural. The culture will be less angry. The culture will be more calm, but austerity will still rule. Like, we're not going to get expanded healthcare beyond the Biden plan, which is not healthcare for all, which means that the private health insurance still stands. I don't know. I think anyone with huge deal, like you should expect us to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord, but don't expect anything monumentally groundbreaking. This is the ship stabilizing back to center. This is not reform and change, in my opinion. I think there's going to be a lot of gridlock regardless. I think winning 2 of these runoffs in Georgia is a pipe dream, and we're going to get gridlock, and they'll just continue to privatize everything and hand over big contracts to big tech and the military, because that's what the ticket was. They squashed through the progressive ideologies. Joe Biden said it. He said, "I am not that." He's talking about Pete Buttigieg running the VA, and it's more Bloomberg's party than Bernie Sanders' party. So you can expect more of that. Anyone who's expecting anything even close to a Green New Deal, or even college tuition, or anything that young people care about, is pretty much off the docket.
I think one of the biggest things is just to see if whether or not Joe Biden follows through with the promises that he has already made. So, like what you said, rejoining the Paris Accord.
Yeah, but I don't even think those are like the promises he's made have been so simple. Those things are so easy. The campaign revolved around getting Trump out of office and specifically not offering anything. You were offering what we could have had, like what we already had. We're going to get back what we already had. We're not going to get anything new. Is my point.
I understand. I think one of the big things that Joe Biden really continued to push forward is his ability to walk across the aisle and work with both the Republicans and the Democrats. And he's, said many times that over the 47 years of, him being in office, that he's been able to do that in all of his line of work. I think this specifically shows will the American people, they chose him, so let's see if he can actually follow through with it. And I think, especially in these first few years, it'll really put him to the test of whether or not he's able to get that done. Especially if the Senate goes into the Republican majority. And I think another big thing that the Democrats have to notice and have to remember too is that Joe Biden is a moderate. He is someone who is okay with pushing forward a Republican bill if it has enough democratic side and values to it, but he is okay supporting something like that. It is not like what you said. It's not going to be the Green New Deal. It's not going to be far left socialistic bills that he's going to push. It's going to be moderate stuff.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of the Democrats need to remember, like what you said, this isn't going to be drastic change from extreme conservatism to extreme liberalism or socialism. It's not going to be that change.
Get
It's going to
ready
go
for
from,
Mitt
yeah.
Romney. Get ready for John Kasich. Maybe Paul Ryan's making a comeback. These are the people that we should be getting. Rahm Emanuel. Get ready for Rahm. These are the names you should expect to hear. Anyone that thinks that Bernie Sanders is going to have a cabinet position is delusional. Um, and honestly, there's a lot of delusion to be had here in politics land. Like, for example, the idea that Joe Biden will be able to shake hands with the other side of the aisle without a majority in the Senate is that's not the America I've lived in. That's not the Mitch McConnell Republicans I know. I've learned
Well,
that lesson.
mhm. Well, I think also another big thing is that the Republican Party itself, from what everyone has known, has completely changed after President Trump took over. It wasn't the Republican Party anymore; it was Trump's party. The Republican Party and like the values from what it was. Let's just say even when John McCain was running, to compare to now, is nothing similar.
You still have
Um,
those obstructionists. You have this plan put forth by the Republican Party, in my opinion, is not Trump's Republican Party. It's Newt Gingrich's Republican Party. This is the stuff that he said years ago that he wanted to do: pack the court, be obstructionist, play dirty, and that's what they're going to do. And I don't think Trump makes any difference with the GOP. Yeah, we saw it with electing these with these court justices.
mhm.
Where was the fair play, the decorum, and the unwritten rules that the Democrats care so much about? Where'd all that evaporate to the second that they got to pull the levers of power? I think no. My ambitions for the next couple years are not pie in the sky.
Good to know. Good to know. And I think many other people probably share the same exact feelings as you do,
Mm-hmm.
Jason. You brought up packing the court, and I think that's something that a lot of people should be watching over the next few years, or just watching
Mm-hmm.
Joe Biden to see if he does. This was a huge question that he avoided consistently, both him and Kamala, whenever they were directly asked in the debates, and when President Trump in the last debate put him on the spot, and Biden still jumped around it. So I think, asking you, do you think he's going to be packing the court?
No, 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 no. The Democrats love decorum. They love unwritten rules. They love not breaking with tradition, and having the court stacked against them gives them a scapegoat to not get any work done because doing work is unpopular. I think the Democrats are pretty much screwed unless they change their entire game plan. I think that this election was extremely underwhelming. I think they should have beaten him by a lot. If anything was functional, they should have won the Senate on their own. But instead, they tried to back picking off never Trumpers rather than focusing on progressive values and the cities and the youth. Instead, they focused on people to flip flop, which didn't happen. And that's why it came down to a plausible conspiracy theory away from 4 years of Trump.
And the last topic I want to hit on before we end the broadcast today is the biggest uphill battle that President-elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will have to face going into their term in office, and
Mhm.
that's getting COVID under control across the country when
Mhm.
about as you, everyone could see, the country is divided, the country is split almost 50-50, and in many places it is 50-50. So when looking at that, how are they supposed to get it under control when about half the country technically doesn't even believe that it's that big of a deal when following President Trump's advice, his jokes about drinking bleach and or
Mhm.
injecting bleach to get it rid of it, and then after contracting COVID himself, coming back and saying, "Oh, it wasn't that big of a deal," after getting so much government health care and benefits, and even using non-publicly released vaccinations for it. Um, how is Joe Biden and the upcoming administration supposed to get through to the American people and to the Republican side that this is something that everyone needs to unite on, and there is no space to argue. It's just this is a battle for survival, not a battle for politics.
Well, I think what we'll do now, what the Biden campaign do, they're announcing a task force, yada yada. But it all comes down to the American psyche. And do I think that we will be able to get COVID under control? I think maybe just because enough time has passed and maybe the herd immunity stuff combined with this new Pfizer vaccine that they're talking about, which is the only vaccine that didn't take federal funding from the government, was Pfizer, and they're pooping out a vaccine now. I think that if Biden manages to get the thing under control, it'll be dumb luck. It'll be a little bit of magic, a little bit of dumb luck, and a little bit of just time passing. They'll dump money into big tech to do contact tracing better. They'll dump money into big pharma to get this vaccine out. And I think maybe we'll be the first country to really push out a vaccine large scale because other countries did a better job at squashing the thing in the beginning. But you can't contain the virus without shutting down the country. Joe Biden says he's not going to shut down the country. So he's going to take a political risk of looking like a liar if he actually tries to do it. But what we know about conservative Democrat Joe Biden is that he's going to try to appeal to Republicans. So he's not going to want to shut down the country. So I don't think coronavirus is getting fixed anytime soon. If you take my honest opinion. I think if it does get solved, it'll be a combination of a little bit more masks. We have to shut down. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's it. It's what we've always had to do, and we didn't do it right in the beginning, and we're probably not going to do it right the second time around.
Well, hopefully we learn at some point, and hopefully the COVID virus finally will go away.
Hopefully, we learn at some point.
At
That's
some
what the
point,
news is.
two,
That's what the
three
news
times.
is.
Yeah,
That's our job.
yeah, that is our
Hopefully, we
job.
learn at some point.
At some point, and keep hitting it on the nail on the head until it finally goes in, or just keep missing and hitting our thumb, I think is what's going on right
Pretty
now.
much.
But thank you so much to everyone who's tuned into this broadcast. This is all the time that we have here today. This was a special election breakdown week coverage from HAPS, the network of Now. Joining me today was my special guest, Jason Peters, an independent reporter from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and then myself, Marco Torres. We want to thank you all for joining in and continue to watch us on HAPS as we continue to show ongoing election broadcast coverage as President Trump has still not conceded his office, has conceded. And we'll be continuing to follow that and much more here on HAPS.